All right. So this seems to be working again. So I guess so am I, right? So yeah, I was on vacation the last week, up in Skull and Bones country. In fact, the Thousand Islands of coastal Maine. I may talk about that a little bit later this week if I choose to keep talking this week because I was up there. I was far and away like the most red state guy there. So it was interesting to get perspectives from uh, uh, lifetime Democrats and liberals from the New England and tri-state New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, I guess quad state, Pennsylvania. There was somebody there from Pennsylvania. Perspective on things. Maybe we'll talk more about that. Maybe we won't. What we are here to talk about today is something that I really thought I should probably write about, but I don't feel like writing about because I'm back from vacation. But I have had a lot of people send me either emails or call me out on social media or link me to something on social media because there's a picture of George Soros, who I think is dead, and I still think he's dead. Sorry, I think he's dead. With his creepy son, his creepy, closeted, effeminate, weirdo, stupid son, Alex. Alex is garbage, but okay, that's fine. So I've written a couple Substacks about how I think George Soros is dead, and that's why he didn't show up for his kid's wedding, and that's why he didn't show up for his Medal of Honor that he got from whoever was running the zombie Biden and fake administration. He didn't show up for any of that stuff. So I said, yeah, he's dead. I think he's been dead for a while. And it's safer for them to keep up the narrative that George Soros is alive because he makes a good scapegoat for both sides. Living George Soros is a great fundraiser for both sides. So let's not confuse ourselves. Because again, George was smart. I mean, George was deeply evil, and so was his kid. But George was smart. Alex Soros is an idiot. I mean, all you got to do is like watch any of his interviews. The guy's an idiot, and his creepy wife, Huma Abedin, who has been tied to the Muslim Brotherhood, she's the one running the show, in my opinion. And everybody hates her. They hate her worse than they hate Soros. And frankly, there's probably much more resentment towards her inside the splintered Democratic establishment than George Soros. I think George Soros inspired like real fear. I'm not sure Huma inspires real fear in the same way. So, I mean, that's it. And I could be wrong. Maybe he is still alive, but I think all circumstantial evidence suggests that photo of Alex with his dad is no more demonstrable proof of life than the last photo Alex put of us with his dad. And you know what I think is really telling? We don't get any photos of George Soros with anybody else, just Alex Soros, his son. You know why that is? Because it's pretty obvious George Soros is dead, and anybody who knows who takes the picture with George Soros is full of animal feces, So that's why. So go ahead, please. Give us more pictures of George Soros, except not with Alex Soros, so we can see who else is just like is such a puppet that they'll go serve idiot Alex Soros. I mean, please, okay? I'm not going to be outsmarted by Alex Soros, all right? And you shouldn't be either. Ugh. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I am like coming off a bit more adamant on this video than the ones I did up to this point, but I am caffeinated. I am back like after a pretty invigorating vacation, I have to say. And we'll talk about that maybe later this week or maybe not. But anyway, that was the one thing. Oh, you know what else I want to say? Yeah, not only do I think George Soros is dead, I would take a flyer that says there's better than 50% chance that Rupert Murdoch is also dead. And he's been dead for years. In fact, he's been dead since pre-COVID, best I can tell, when he had that terrible accident of some sort on his yacht in the middle of nowhere. And the only people who wrote about it was Vanity Fair. And then the only people who wrote, any references, they did no original reporting on their own. Like everybody's, oh my God, Rupert Murdoch's hurt bad on his yacht. And Vanity Fair says so. Nobody did any original reporting on that. We didn't see the guy for months and months and months. Then he shows up at some White House event at a distance with his new wife, Jerry Hall, who used to be married to Mick Jagger. I mean, so like you got a whole parade of liars and starfuckers, pardon me. Um, so I don't know. I mean, it's very easy to put a fake mask on somebody today. I mean, if you want proof, contact me. There's tons of videos. So don't be sitting here calling me like some unhinged theorist, because these things do exist. And nobody like has seen Murdoch up close except at any of these events at a distance. I mean, again, he makes a much better scapegoat. Now his kids are running the show over at Fox, and so they don't want to take the heat. Let's like push it off on dead dad. Again, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I just know how conniving and duplicitous and evil these people are, and how much they get off on fooling you. Like, these people live to fool you. That's like one of their top things. Not the top thing. I mean, raping children is the top thing, Um, uh, but anyway, we'll move on from that. Maybe. Oh, one other thing. I'm not convinced Kate Murdoch's a lot. Oh, sorry, Kate. What's her face? Middleton, the princess of who cares? I mean, I thought she was dead. Then they paraded her out a bunch of places, and I don't know. The other thing that does strike me about that whole Kate Middleton thing is it's possible that they like just pretended she was dead. So like that became this like giant mediagasm story just while Israel was, making the next move after their let it happen on purpose false flag thing on October of a couple years ago. So yeah, the Kate Middleton might be dead thing was a massive distraction from the early days of the Israel incursion into what is now, I'm sorry, it's a genocide. It's a genocide. I held off saying it was a genocide for a long time. I tried to play fair. I was just like, nah, it's just mass murder. But I think we can kind of say it's like it's a genocide at this point. And I mean, I got to tell Israel, like the Jews have lost their country before because they pissed off God. I mean, that has happened before. You can be God's chosen people, but it's like the Spider-Man thing, like with great power comes great responsibility. And dudes, you're blowing it. I mean, really, you became what you hated, I mean, and another yuck moment. So again, I'll just reiterate, if you're an America First Jew, I got no problem with you. You're my equal. I don't judge you. Whatever. America First Jew, we are fine. Israel First Jew, go back to Israel. Okay? Seriously. Ben Shapiro, can I curse? Get the fuck out of my country. All right, Ben Shapiro? Get the fuck out of my country. All right? All America First Jews, please stick around. You're smart, you're funny, you like baseball. I've had tons of great Jewish friends throughout my life who loved America. Welcome. Thank you. All right, so there's that. This is clearly going to be longer than my customary, I want to keep this under 10 minutes today. We're not going to get there. I suppose I could break this up into multiple videos, but I'm back from vacation and I don't really care. So, you want to fast forward through this, whatever, I do care that you're here, and I do appreciate you watching, but I'm just not feeling so motivated to like break this up into multiple videos. That's what I'm saying. All right. I'm never going to be one of those people who's like, if you don't like my books, then don't buy them. Or if you don't like my movie, then don't see it. Or sorry, if you don't like what I say, don't go see my movie or don't go read my book or anything. Everything that I'm doing here is for everyone. It's for everyone. I'm not trying to exclude anybody. I am just saying things that I think some people will find exclusionary, but that's not my intent. I mean, if somebody wrote this back to me, somebody sent me a message after my interview with Zeph Daniel, and spoke to the moment where I said, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I don't want people to lose their souls. I mean, and I think that's where I'm coming from. I don't want any of you to lose your souls. That's like the big goal here of the bad guys. Maybe even bigger than raping kids, actually, getting your soul out of everybody. Oh, I do got to tell this one story from the weekend up in Maine. one of the guys who was there actually knew Epstein. Like, not well. He's a news guy. He's a news guy at a. He's an older news guy. You don't see him around much anymore. But he did do some work for CNN, and he knew or had met Epstein peripherally, two events or whatever. Said he was charming. He's a really, interesting guy. Spoke a bit. But also said that he heard from somebody else inside his organization that, like, one of the things Epstein loved to do was break up marriages. He was constantly trying to break up marriages. Little honeypot for some guy over here, some, like, good Christian dude otherwise who thinks he is, but since they know your internet stuff, they know what you like, and maybe they just make an offer you think you can't refuse. Next thing you know, your marriage is down in flames. Been there, done that. Not through Epstein, though. Wouldn't that have been like, something else? But it wasn't. So, onward and upward. What did I read while I was away? And they're both relevant. One of them was this. I held it up. Superman in the 70s, because that's what I think kind of what we got with that recent movie. I think a lot of people kind of missed what James Gunn was doing with Superman. It seemed pretty clear to me when it walked out. He was trying to give us like a classic 1960s Kurt Swan like series of comic book issues. There are almost like 4 comic book stories inside Superman, which some people are like, well, that made it episodic and kind of fragmented. But I just thought it was very comic booky, and it was jobby, and I think it was kind of like Kurt Swan, the Superman artist, throughout the 60s and into the 70s, through the TikTok lens for a TikTok generation. And that might be why, or one of the reasons why, Superman did so much better in the United States than the rest of the world. Maybe we're just too adolescent. Maybe we're just too short attention span addicted, and I don't dismiss the criticisms of people who say that's a problem with the movie. And I didn't see it that way, but maybe a couple years down the line, I will feel differently. I was glad Superman was a really big hit in America. I was mildly disappointed it was a flop overseas, And there are a lot of people who tell you like they don't want to use the word flop or whatever. But I mean, guys, if you're going to be taken seriously, you got to recognize when this stuff happens. And Superman was a big hit in the United States. It's going to be the second biggest movie of the summer after the dinosaur movie, which was terrible, but I saw it opening weekend, and I'll see the next one opening weekend, even though it'll probably even be worse, which seems impossible, honestly, like that you could actually make a worse movie than Jurassic whatever 7, that new one, Rebirth, Afterbirth, I think people have been calling it Rebirth. I'm not sure you can make a worse movie than that, but I bet they're going to try. They're going to try. I do think there is in fact, I have heard, this is like just not boop, off the top of my head. I have heard, that there are people in Hollywood who have such contempt for you. I mean, they hate you. Like, they get off on making bad movies that'll make money. Like, that's a big thing to them. They love pulling the wool over your eyes with terrible movies that make money, because then it just reassures the fact that your lowest common denominator dross, And I can't point any fingers here because, boom, I was there opening weekend for Jurassic whatever 7. I was there. And like the little reptile part of my brain, he liked the movie. He was entertained by that last half hour when the dinosaurs, or the fake dinosaurs, go dino crazy. Whatever. I had fun, but it was terrible. I can, hold those two thoughts of mine in the same thought. So there's that. The Superman book was easy to read. I plowed right through it. But after that, I reread Up and Down with the Rolling Stones, which is by the late, not so great, but certainly interesting, Tony Sanchez. When I read Up and Down with the Rolling Stones, which was originally published in 1979 in the United Kingdom and didn't make it to America until the early 80s, I had a friend who got a copy of Up and Down with the Rolling Stones when it was originally published in the UK, and it was called I Was Keith Richards' Drug Dealer, because that's who Tony Sanchez really was. He was the guy who procured heroin and coke and pot and all that sort of stuff for the Rolling Stones, or actually mostly Keith, because Keith consumed more drugs than all the other members of the Rolling Stones combined. And that's actually saying something, because Charlie Watts became a junkie and whatever. Mick Jagger, he's certainly done like more coke than probably the entire state of Oklahoma, let's say. Yes, Up and Down with the Rolling Stones by Tony Sanchez. I bring this up because, first of all, what a hugely well-written and entertaining novel. If this book was complete fiction and you replaced the Rolling Stones with, I don't know, the Great Hawklings, let's say, some fictitious band, this would still be a great book, I gotta say. So I find it very hard to believe that Tony Sanchez actually wrote this book. I find it more likely he told these stories to somebody else, and somebody else with talent wrote it. But I can't tell. There's no acknowledgement at the front of the book. There's no ghost written by blah blah. I've got I'm not sure if this guy is still a friend. So since he seems like he might be serving the establishment for money, I mean, I'm not trying to badmouth this guy. He's a talented writer, and I respect him, even though he does kind of believe. Anyway, David Peisner. I'm giving him a plug, and if my giving him a plug is bad for his career, David has no idea I'm doing this, okay? And he probably and maybe doesn't even want my endorsement. But David Peisner is a great writer. And David Peisner ghost wrote the autobiography of Steve-O, and I think that's on the record. And I think a couple other people that he ghost wrote that's not on the record. So if you read any autobiographies, you're wow, that guy seemed like an idiot. And this is a really well-written book. Good chance it might have been ghost written by David Peisner. So that's what I'm saying. That's the only reason I bring up David. And sorry, David, if you think I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist now because you write for the New York Times and other publications I don't trust, but I still trust you, David. Anyway, so Up and Down with the Rolling Stones is very possible it had a ghostwriter that's not Tony Sanchez. But boy, did Tony Sanchez have some amazing stories, and I really just want to share a couple of them with you because they're insightful and they resonate with me. I want to make sure I don't forget over here. Oh yeah, good. I'm glad I wrote that down. I might have forgotten. So the story covers from about 1962, 61 till the late 1970s. So basically you get this guy, Tony Sanchez, is with the Rolling Stones. He's Keith's right-hand man, getting him his drugs, because Keith can't go out and get drugs, although sometimes he got so desperate he did. For almost, 62, 70, 15 years. 15 years. And through the three permutations of the band, which is what makes it kind of interesting. He starts off, the Rolling Stones are the five guys, and one of them is Brian Jones. He dies, and then Mick Taylor joins, and Tony Sanchez is still there. And this is my favorite permutation of the Rolling Stones, which ran from the later end of the 60s until about the mid-70s. I think that's the best string of albums from them. And then after Mick leaves, because Mick Taylor, the guitarist, leaves because he's done so much coke, he's burned out his septum. And the septum is this little thing in the middle of your nose. He burned out the middle of it. I heard the same happen to Stevie Nicks. Our Stevie Nicks, who I like. No hard feelings, Stevie. But you did a lot of coke. Tony Sanchez. So there were a couple things that I wanted to mention. There are at least 100 stories in this book worth reading. Just amazing stuff. But I did make a couple notes about a couple while I was reading it. The first one is about the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And Tony Sanchez says that after Keith Richards got busted for heroin, and he was not allowed to tour in the United States of America, the Stones had a ambassador friend who, I can't remember, was either the American ambassador to England or the British ambassador to the United States. I can't remember which one it is. It's one of those two. Like I said, these are amateur podcasts. You're going to get good info out of it, but you're also going to be like, gee, that guy doesn't really know what he's doing, or he didn't take good notes or something like that. And I'm sorry about that. I am, because I want people to listen. Anyway, so this ambassador guy, he works out something with the U.S. government so the Stones can tour America, and it's going to make tons of money. So, of course, that's part of it. But they also get a sponsor. General Motors is sponsoring this tour with the Rolling Stones. So, like the first night of the show, Tony Sanchez is hanging out with Keith Richards in a hotel room, and maybe there were a couple other people there. And there's a knock on the door, and Keith answers it, and it's like these two big guys, like over 6 feet tall, broad shoulders, looked like they could have used to play football. Probably looked like that one FBI guy I know who I went to both high school and college with, named Frank. They probably look like that guy. That's how I perceive them. So anyway, these two FBI guys show up at Keith Richards' hotel door, where Tony Sanchez is hanging with Keith. And the FBI guys are there to tell them, look, we're here to protect you because we know you're a heroin junkie. And General Motors has put a lot of money behind this Rolling Stones tour, and in no way can General Motors be associated with a heroin junkie. So we don't want you out there trying to procure heroin for the next 2 months or whatever, how long they were on tour in America, and getting busted, because you're not going to find heroin everywhere you're going. You're going to have to hire some dealers in local cities to find your heroin. We know this, Keith. We know you. So we, the FBI, we have a solution, Keith. Keith, we're going to supply your heroin. Yeah. During the Rolling Stones mid-70s tour of the United States, the FBI, according to Tony Sanchez, I'm not saying this, Tony Sanchez, the drug dealer, Keith's drug dealer, Keith Richards' drug dealer, he's the guy who says that. He claims that on the 1977, 76, can't remember what year, mid-70s tour, FBI came to Keith Richards, told him General Motors is sponsoring the Rolling Stones tour. We cannot have you busted for heroin. Too much money involved. We'll get you your heroin. True? False? I don't know. Nobody got sued. Tony Sanchez never got sued for defamation. You know, he did die mysteriously like 20 years later, but that was 20 years later. So there's that. That was maybe the most interesting story of the many, many interesting stories inside the Tony Sanchez book, including some speculation about what really happened with Brian Jones. And there's a very interesting passage where I think it's Marianne Faithfull, who was passed around through the band, and one of the most beautiful women of the swinging London era, like stunningly, like angelically beautiful woman who, of course, whose innocence was dragged through who knows what. Anyway, at one point, Marianne Faithfull almost overdoses, and while she's like on that brink between death and life, she says she came into contact with Brian Jones, and he sent her back. And he said, but I want people to know that like I wasn't murdered or anything like that. What happened was I had an asthmatic attack while I was swimming in my pool, and I couldn't get up, and I drowned. You know, and I wish it didn't happen. I wish I could have come back and cleaned up my act, but it didn't happen. So I don't know. That's what the story is inside Up and Down with the Rolling Stones. That was given to Marianne Faithfull allegedly after she almost died of a drug overdose, and Brian Jones had died earlier. So that's already a story I didn't want to tell from the book, but now you heard it. God, this thing is almost pushing 25 minutes. I should have broken it up. I hope I'm not boring you, but whatever. I didn't want to write today. So there was another really good passage in that book about Bianca Jagger. That wasn't her real first name. She had like 6 names because she was some South American beauty or whatever. Um, uh, and you know, Bianca Jagger was this beautiful woman, or so they said. I thought she was attractive. I don't know. Like, she's kind of distinctive looking, like in the same way that you would think, like, is Mick Jagger good looking? Not really, but he's sort of like distinctive looking, and he's got presence. That was the same thing with Bianca Jagger. For one thing, she looked a lot like Mick Jagger, which was weird, you know. I mean, in fact, even like Tony Sanchez says in the book, like everybody was basically talking that Mick Jagger decided he had to hook up with Bianca Jagger. By the way, who he stole from, Bianca Jagger was like engaged to a record executive at, I believe, like the label that owned the Rolling Stones' new independent label, which makes it not so independent, of course. So like Mick Jagger like stole the fiance. Anyway, whatever. She looks like Mick Jagger. And the point that Tony Sanchez makes in his book is that everybody says that, like, the reason Mick Jagger loved Bianca Jagger so much was because it was the closest he was ever going to, that narcissist, it was the closest that demonic narcissist would ever get to fucking himself. So that's basically it. So that's what they say. Again, I don't say it. Tony Sanchez says it in the book. So, no hard feelings, Mick. As demonic guys go, I like you a lot more than most, and you're very smart. I don't dispute that. I mean, that comes out very clearly in the book. You're much smarter than Keith. I mean, no hard feelings, Keith. You're like one of my rock heroes, but you're not. You got street smarts. You got street smarts. I mean, and I like guys with street smarts. I was just up in Maine with a couple guys who, barely got out of high school and are blue collar guys and Democrats but street smart, you know? So, yeah. Which is probably why I like Keith more than I like Mick, even though Keith is clearly more evil. I mean, holy cow. There's some really evil, selfish, backstabbing, degenerate stuff in this book about Keith Richards. And what can I say? I still like the guy. He's a terrible person, I guess, or maybe he's mellowed now. He's in his 80s, right? But holy cow, Keith Richards in his 70s. I mean, being a junkie will do that to you. And being, I don't know, were they married? Being significantly entrenched with a dark occult witch. That's the other interesting thing. Again, another digression. Another interesting thing about this book. Keith's significant other, Anita Pallenberg, who actually I wrote about on Facebook and who died a year or so ago, or a couple years ago, and just had a documentary. She's a black occult witch, dark occult witch, and she's like casting spells on people she doesn't like, and sometimes it seems to work, like people die, and then sometimes nothing ever happens, which I guess makes me circle back to Bianca Jagger, because Bianca Jagger was one of the people who Anita Pallenberg despised and tried to cast dark occult spells against, and they didn't work. They just didn't work. So, the passage that really stuck with me in this book, and that like resonated with me, and why I have respect for Bianca Jagger, is because it says at one point, Bianca didn't seem to have the normal human weakness of needing to be liked. That made people just a little bit afraid of her. I like that. I like that. So, that might be something else that attracted Mick Jagger to Bianca Jagger. You should live your life that way. Don't care what other people think. All right. This is already long, so I'm going to leave one of these things off, I guess. Maybe we'll get back to it later this week. I mean, I'd like to make this at least, I got 50 seconds. Make this a half an hour or less. So going back to not caring what other people think. I've said this before and I'll say it again. This may be one of the most important, I don't know about, maybe not. It is an important point. I don't know if it's the most important point. Like, differentiate between being good. In my case, I like to think of it in a masculine way, but I speak to women about this. But I'm going to put this in the masculine sense, because I do think it's time for men to step up again and lead. Women had their shot and they blew it, right? I mean, like, I wrote 5, 6 years ago that the matriarchy was rising and I was welcoming it, but we didn't really get a nurturing matriarchy. We got this like weird lesbian, trans, man hating, humanity hating, like pseudo feminism, but it didn't work, you know. If the goddesses or whoever's up there want to offer up some like real like feminine maternal, leadership, fine with me. But that's not what we're getting now. We're getting really bad, ugly pseudo female leadership. So guys have got to step up, and I think we are. It kind of looks like we are. But anyway, I'm digressing, and I'm past a half an hour, I'm sure. And maybe I'm burying the lead. Maybe the most important thing I was going to tell you is coming at the end of this thing. But hopefully you enjoyed the Rolling Stones stuff. Difference between being good and like being nice, being kind. I am dubious about all these people on the left who keep pushing this like, be kind, be nice. Even James Gunn, kindness is punk rock. Is it? Maybe it is to an extent in our cruel age, but goodness nowadays is punk rock. Goodness is punk rock. It may be. I don't even know. Goodness is good. Goodness moves things forward. Not naive goodness, not niceness or kindness masking a pseudo goodness. Do the right thing is what you should be doing. Don't do the nice thing. Maybe do the kind thing sometimes, but do the good thing. Do the right thing. And I think that's what they're trying to muddy the waters with, especially now that they're losing. You'll notice that now we're getting the narrative again, the same way we got the narrative from, what's her face, Rosie. And then after Rosie got pushed out, then we got it from Ellen. Be good, be nice. Sorry, they never say be good. They say be kind. They say be nice. So, they're losing now. So, of course, they're going to be started talking about be nice, be kind. They'll use it as a weakness. They'll see that as weakness. They do see that as weakness. Trust me, I know it. They see that as weakness. Goodness is not weakness. So, I didn't say everything I wanted to say today, and I may have digressed further than I wanted on other things, but I mean, that's where I am this morning. I've been offline for almost a week, and I got all these emails and messages and stuff. So that's it. Where are we? 33. Ooh, you know what? Let's keep this going to like 33. Wow. Okay, let's end that there. That would be pretty crazy. Or you can just shut it off now. Go ahead, shut it off now. Right? No, go ahead. It's okay. Really. I'm not going to say anything else. I'm not really. There's nothing else you're going to hear here of any merit whatsoever. Oh, wait! Epstein didn't kill himself.